Hello, welcome to this video. This is going to be serious because today, take two. Hello, welcome to this video. And this video is going to be serious because today we're going to be going through the 10 biggest bastards in rock and roll. Now, I think I should be on there. I'm a bastard. Are you a bastard? Is a bastard a bad thing or a good thing? I don't know yet. Now, I'll tell you what a bastard I am. I haven't even got a list. No, I haven't even worked anything out. I just like the title. I thought that's a good title. That'll bring him here. Right, I'm doing well at the moment. My views have gone up. Right? And I need to have the title that will bring them here. And I cannot think of anything more musical, more accurate, more full of rock and roll sort of and full of hate, like the 10 worst bastards in rock and roll. So who are we going to have at number 10? Well, the guy we're going to have at number 10 is an honorary bastard. And because I don't think he actually was, but he sort of embodies the idea before we get in it. And of course it is the late great Mr. Lemmy Kilmister.
We never gave up anything, you know. We never let them do anything to us. We never said, okay, yes, sir, you know. We never did that. We always said, fuck you.
Lemmy Kilmister, we love him so much, right? Now, when he formed his band Motorhead, which he formed after he got kicked out of bloody Hawkwind for taking too much drugs, right? Can you imagine being in Hawkwind and getting kicked out for taking too much drugs? But it was the sort of drugs he was taking. He'd got off all the bloody LSD and, you know, marijuana. And he was into the speed and all that type of stuff, you know. And Lemmy, you know, he was, you know, a windswept, wide-eyed rocker on his way to hell when he was born. He was always like that. He never quite succumbed to all the extravagancies of progressive rock and jazz rock fusion. Of course, he was a true rock and roller, right? He was a true rock and roller. And so towards the mid-70s, he's punk before punk happens. Lemmy was naturally punk. He always was punk because he was rock and roll, right? And he combined this idea of the sort of Jim Morrison languid lounge lizard type thing with a touch of the English gentleman and a little bit of the SS commandant. He had all those things wound in him, Lemmy did. So by 1975, his natural inclination was drawing to him to form a band that was punk before anybody had been punk. Motorhead were punk before anyone was punk because Motorhead was Lemmy and Lemmy was punk. Now Motorhead, I think, was named after a track that Hawkwind used to do, I think. I would like to think it's named after Motorhead Sherwood, who was a similar type of character that was in the early Mothers of Invention. I don't think he was a particularly good musician, but he was in there because he was mates with the band. And he, again, was another rock and roll bastard. He looks like that. The real bastard, though, will be the one I've just got at number 9, and he's a proper bastard. There's all going to be all sorts of bastards here. Basically, whoever I think of as I do this one. But yeah, I hope they weren't named after Motorhead. But the thing was, Motorhead weren't going to be called Motorhead in the early days. They were going to be called Bastard. Can you think? Just think of that. Do you think if Motorhead had been called Bastard? And when Ace of Spades was the hit, what would have happened when they went on Top of the Pops to play it? Now, I'm sure that was considered by the record company. Now, Lemmy could have stuck to his guns and said, no, it's Bastard or nothing. But he changed it. You know why he changed it? Because he didn't have that sort of moral compass. He did not give a toss, right? He really didn't give a toss. He wasn't the punks that were, in the end, ended up being sort of middle-class, lefty, right-on types that couldn't put a foot wrong, you know, were all political, you know, like the Clash. He wasn't that. Lemmy did not have a political bone in his body, right? What Lemmy represented was the ability, it's a very rare British aesthetic quality, right? Which is the ability to be off your head drunk, off your head on drugs, but because you're British, it doesn't touch you. Francis Bacon was one of these types. Dylan Thomas, who was Welsh, obviously, and not English, he was one of those types. We've got so many of these types. It's like it's a certain moral character, and it's like the dark esoteric heart of the English gentleman. That's what Lemmy represents to me. Now, there is a great sculptor out there who has a wonderful name called Andy Edwards. That isn't me, by the way, because the BBC thought it was me the other day. They thought that not only am I a brilliant YouTuber and an amazing drummer and multi-instrumentalist and general know-it-all, they also thought that I was a sculptor, because they rang me up and wanted to ask me questions about the incredible Lemmy sculpture that's been put up in Stoke-on-Trent. Yes, Lemmy has his own sculpture now, created by none other than Andy Edwards. Not me, the other Andy Edwards, and yes, not the bloke from Southend United that used to play there a few years ago. They're the three most famous Andy Edwardses. And we're all vying for being the most famous Andy Edwards. When I first started in the music industry, it was undoubtedly the bloke from Southend United. I would hope it's me now. So if you can Google Andy Edwards, nothing else, put it in and see who comes up, right? And if that bloody bloke's overtaken me with his Lemmy sculpture, I won't be happy. You know what he'll be? He'll be a bastard. Now I've got into this video, I'm starting to understand what this is about. It's not about actual bastards. It could be called rogues. Right, we're really looking at the top 10 rogues in music history. That's what we're going to go for. Lemmy has set the template, and Lemmy could well be at number 1. So let's park him there, because it's him and his statue that has inspired this video. Who's the next rogue on the list? Well, for me, it has to be John Lydon.
You better speak English to me. You're mumbling into a furry thing. What?
I said, are bands these days as rock and roll as they used to be?
I've never liked the idea or concept of any category. So when you say rock and roll, you know, it grates on me like Flares did in the 60s. Yeah, most young bands are a bit lemon, like weak, like they all try and act tough, but there's no content. It's all down to the songs. Have the songs meanings for real people or not? Mine do. If yours don't, oh, hello.
Hello, on the way in, you expressed your dislike for awards ceremonies. Has it changed now that you've got something?
Are you being ridiculous? Who do you think you're talking to? Oh, you're awfully young. It must be tough not knowing what you're talking about and who you're talking to. Never mind. Award ceremonies. I think they're tougher on you than me. I just have the wonderful position in life that I choose to do what I want to do and nobody tells me what to do. For me, there is no order. But there is respect and loyalty and a sense of values and community. There will always be in England.
I love John Lydon, and again, like Lemmy, he is the epitome of the English gentleman, right? But this dark esoteric aspect of the English gentleman. James Bond's the same. James Bond's an English gentleman, but when we look to his moral heart, we don't know whether he's good or not, right? Because they represent something against the norm. James Bond starts off being this sort of hero that seems to be immoral. But by the time we get to the 70s, he's an English gentleman out of place. English gentlemanness had to change. Lemmy comes and fills that gap quite well. But another guy that does it for me is John Lydon. Of course, John Lydon is English, and he seems to be proud of his Englishness, but he's really British. And he is an Irish immigrant coming from Irish immigrant family, growing up in poverty. But the thing that makes him different was his love of the English aesthetic, of the English literary tradition, but also British comedies, British film. And he seems to embody this in a way that's absolutely wonderful. When he comes up against a sort of aspiring glam rock band with not much talent in the mid-70s, he comes in and brings in that little touch of Richard III, as Laurence Olivier's version, maybe a touch of Aqualung, the character from Jethro Tull, maybe the vocal delivery of Peter Hamill from Van der Graaf Generator. He brings in a whole echelon of stuff, and he stands there spying at you, looking at you with eyes that look right into your soul and challenge you. Are you a bullshitter? Are you fake? I'm not going to take it. John Lydon brings in an aesthetic which is, this is the standard I expect, and if you don't adhere to it, I am not going to be impressed, right? But with that, he does it to open himself up to the real people in the world. He is not an artist. He is not part of the elite. He is part of you and me. He's every man. He is like Zarathustra coming down from the mountain in Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra with words of wisdom, but these words of wisdom seem to be coming from a crazy man. And John Lydon, as time goes on, proved himself not to be the puppet of Malcolm McLaren, of some band that had just been put together where it was all about surface and conning people, which I know a lot of the proggers believe the Sex Pistols were. No, the Sex Pistols were a good rock and roll band, like AC/DC is a good rock and roll band. Like the Ramones is a good rock and roll band, although the Ramones are nowhere near as good as AC/DC. Like Motorhead are a good rock and roll band. So were the Sex Pistols. But they had this bloke up front and he represented something. When he left, he proved his music credentials without going towards some virtuoso thing, but by skirting a very interesting middle path that goes somewhere between art and revolution with Public Image Limited. He's out with Public Image Limited at the moment. Years later, he started doing adverts for butter where he'd stomp around the English countryside wearing tweed.
Do I buy Country Life butter because it's British?
Do I buy Country Life because I yearn for the British countryside?
And everyone thought he was terrible. No, he was showing his true colours. That's what John Lydon is. Then he went off when he was a celebrity in the jungle, Get Me Out of Here, wasn't he? He was on one of those. And what did he do? He went in there and then left, didn't play the game, and spent his whole time celebrating nature.
So good looking. That's a truly contented feeling. Excellent. Not shy at all. Superb animal.
Like the great Englishmen that went out, like Charles Darwin, went out and discovered the theory of evolution because they were interested in shells and leaves. That's an English gentleman thing to do, right? And now he's out and he's still being a bastard. And the reason why he's still being a bastard is because he's decided he's a Trump supporter. He decided he's MAGA. He's still continually upsetting the apple cart. Right? And that's what I love about him. He's a rogue. He does not give a toss. Well, the only thing that's changed is he's gone from that malicious stare of accusation to a little giggly goblin that is there causing trouble. He knows himself so well. He's been through so much stuff, his best mate died and then his beloved wife died. We have seen him, he's cried, he's laughed. I went to see him last year with my wife. It was an incredible experience to see John Lydon. I think he's one of the great poets of the English literary tradition. I think he's a wonderful guy. But he's a bastard, isn't he? Number 8 on my list of bastards has to be Frank Zappa.
Do you think that music today, not just in LA, rock and roll music in general, is more formula than it was, say, in the 60s?
Absolutely.
Do you think there's any feeling left in music?
You here on MTV should know about formula music. Come on, give me a break. Let's face it. We are talking mass formulation.
Right? What a spiky individual he was, right? Like John Lydon, he just wouldn't take any shit, would he? Not Frank. Now, Frank, was he a likeable person? I don't know. There's certain aspects of him that seem to be very nice, but there's other aspects that seem to be not so nice. Frank Zappa seemed to be almost traumatized by his upbringing, being brought up by a sort of chemical engineer father that was out in the desert trying to invent ways of killing people. And such was his work that they all had to wear these gas masks in the house. So he grew up in a very strange environment. And he seems to be a spiky individual. He loved the rhythm and blues, probably because it was countercultural being a white musician in that area at the time. But also he was a big fan of Morrison. He eventually seems to have managed to gain a recording studio in his local town where he's asked to make sort of sex films, and he won't make sex films, but he's quite happy to make sex tapes. And after jumping in around on a bed with a friend of his, pretending to make certain noises of fornication, he gets arrested and placed in prison for 2 years. And this is the point, I think, where Zappa starts to have a massive mistrust of the world around him and a mistrust of the whole thing. And as he develops as an artist through the 1960s and he sees the hippie movement happening, he spots the contradictions and hypocrisy of that movement. He is an antithesis of the hippie movement. And the antithesis of the hippie movement was the freaks. He celebrates the freaks. And in this, he does things that could be quite questionable. And there's some of you might turn around and go, well, that's a bit off. For example, he signs to his record label Wildman Fisher. And Wildman Fisher is a man with terrible mental health problems. He puts him into the studio where this guy sort of free associates as sheer madness, right? He records it and puts it out, he markets him, and he actually sells this record, and this guy is an act. Just before Wildman Fisher died, there's videos of him now still acting as though he was a musical artist, when he wasn't. He was an experiment by Frank Zappa. GTOs, the sort of groupie band that he put together out of various girls that were like, you know, trying to get in with various rock stars in Laurel Canyon. Many of them who got involved in drugs and some of them who died, you know. And he has a sort of evil circus master aspect about him, where he seems to be set in the middle of these people and maybe being a bit exploitative. His commitment to his music making was so strong that his family didn't matter. And with Moon Unit's recent autobiography, it seems that Frank was only interested in making music and being ensconced in that, with very little interest in his family, but with a great interest in having sex with various groupies, which his family and his wife were supposed to tolerate. And Gail did tolerate, but it seemed to have turned her into quite a mean and nasty person who took that nastiness out on Gail. Right, this is the new revelations that surround Frank, but these sort of things have always surrounded Frank. And so he was always a thorn in the side of people. If he was around today, his anti-identity politics stance, his lack of political correctness, would still, even now, at the age of 85, which is how old he'll be, well, he'd actually be 84, I think he'd be 85 towards the end of this year, would still be, at that age, cutting him out as a countercultural figure, someone that does not fit in. And as you could see, I have a little bit of that. I have a little bit of let's upset the apple cart. I've got a little bit of the contrarian. I have been described by some as an introvert rule breaker when I've been, you know, personality profiled by various organisations which wanted to see whether I was worth having in their organisation. The answer is no. I am far better off running a YouTube like this, whereas I can be as anarchic as I possibly can. So if you want to know what the definition of bastard is on this video, which I didn't have when I started, it is basically someone who is a contrarian that will not fit in and will act like a pain in the bum when they can. And they enjoy stoking that up. And we're going to get another 7 of them, because now we are moving on to number 7. At number 7, I have Frank's nemesis, really, Mr. Lou Reed.
Is life so boring for you, then?
No.
What do you like most in life?
Everything.
Is there any things you like better than others?
No.
Where do you spend your money?
On drugs.
Now, I've had a go at Lou Reed on this channel many a time, right? The reason I have a go at Lou Reed is because he acted in a way and presented himself in a way that fooled the music critics. He's the sort of guy that the music critics have to say he's good, right? It doesn't matter what he does. There's a whole bunch of them, right? They have a certain stance. And by having this stance, the music industry has to say they're great. They have to give 5 stars to their albums. They have to do all this and this, throw accolades at Mr. Lou Reed. But did he really deserve those? Well, the truth is he probably did, right? Lou Reed, unlike what the powers that be would have us think. So the powers that be have us think that Andy Warhol is in his factory. He decides to sign up a rock and roll band to his sort of media empire that contains bad filmmakers and bad models and, you know, his bad art and all this bad stuff. It's just a factory churning out stuff. And he wants a rock and roll band. He goes and finds a rock and roll band in the local environs. Now, this rock and roll band may well have just stayed in obscurity if it wasn't for Andy Warhol championing them. But what he pulled together was more a collection of artists rather than musicians, right? I couldn't tell you who the bass player is in Velvet Underground, but in Maureen Tucker, also known as Mo, we had someone who couldn't play drums but was willing to sit in the background banging her own handmade drum kit in a sort of intuitive way, thus destroying the very fundamental dynamic that underpins the rock and roll band. But in the band, we had 2 super talented people. Mr. John Cale, who is an incredible musician, multi-instrumentalist, classically trained, a very interesting musician and songwriter. And then Mr. Lou Reed, who was a bog standard, down the line, Tin Pan Alley songwriter. And this is what makes Velvet Underground so interesting. Now, I had to go at Velvet Underground the other day, and this always happens to me. I stumbled on a couple of their tracks. I ended up listening to them, and I thought, oh, they're so good. They are really good. There's a certain vibe to it. There's a certain, I can't explain, it's otherness. It's of its time, but it's not. And I think what it is, it's the conjunction of basically quite saccharine songwriting with a sort of avant-garde postmodernist aesthetic, which is all conceptual, like razor blades and buckets of sick. It's all bondage gear. It's a certain aesthetics that's in the music, droning, sort of drug-related, you know, evil doors. That's what they sound like. They sound like the evil doors. But when you go in there and you hear shiny, 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 this could be, you know, if you had a different arrangement, this could be a song that was featured in Audrey Hepburn film in the 1960s. That's the sort of songwriter he is. He's related to Burt Bacharach. Think of Perfect Day. That's Lou Reed's genius. But even though he has that talent, he decides to be almost like a curmudgeon. He's a grumpy curmudgeon, isn't he? And in that, I'm pretty sure that his stance against Frank Zappa was because he knew full well of Zappa's talent. But like John Lydon, like Zappa, like Lemmy, he had a standard, but it was his own standard. He had his own aesthetic standard. And some of Zappa's elitism, Lou Reed wasn't going to stomach. He would see it shallow. Oh, yes, it's all very intellectual. It's all lots of scales and chords and notes. It's all very clever. You're being all very clever, Frank. Very clever. But where's the heart of this? And where is the heart? The heart is the ability to admit to your frailties, to write songs about being a heroin addict, to write songs like Waiting for My Man, where you're on the corner waiting for somebody to come up and sort you out. Right? Zappa would never be like that. Zappa is always in a certain place. He's always sat there like this. And Lou Reed isn't. Lou Reed actually not only wears his frailties on his sleeve, but he wears them in an aggressive fashion. He basically goes to the music world, and the music critics see this, and they can't deal with this. And because his lyrics are so literate and articulate, these wordsmiths that fancy themselves as writers, of authors, but aren't, they've downgraded themselves to being a music critic, they're fooled by it, you know. And they're not going to be fooled by Frank Zappa singing about Bobby Browns or Jewish princesses. They're going to hate that. That's like sophisticated music with the lyrics of the working man. Lou Reed's like the opposite. The music of the working man, the dark, simplistic punk of Velvet Underground, but linked with a drug haze. And so I think I've championed Lou Reed here on this channel. I've also vilified him. I think that's right. And I think, basically, he was a difficult bloke. He's a bastard. Who have I got at number 6 on my list of rock and roll bastards? It has to be Van the Man.
Terry Yarborough in Birmingham, Alabama writes, everyone knows you were greatly influenced by American blues greats, Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker. Are there any musicians or groups today that really excite you?
No.
No.
Absolutely not. No.
Nothing?
Nothing. Nothing. Nothing.
Van bloody Morrison. I'm putting him on here. And once I decide to attach bastard status to him, he also almost goes up in my estimations, right? Though I've said how I hate that little Irish goblin, you know, with his horrible yelping and his sudden shouts that always make me feel very nervous. You know, can't stick him. Astral Weeks, they all think it's bloody wonderful. No, it's not. It's just someone with 3 or 4 cuds barking away, right? I'm not a big fan at all. Don't like him, right? I went on tour with him. I've told this all a million times. He was a horrible bloke, basically. He was a bastard, right? Now, I've gone on about this, and all the Van Morrison fans are going, I actually really like Van Morrison. I don't think he really appreciates Astral Weeks. It's a wonderful thing, and he does this and that. They all get all sorts of that. And then somebody's come in the comments the other day, and I apologise for not, you know, I don't know whether you want to have this sort of profile put on you, so I will keep you anonymous. But they said something like, I knew Van Morrison because I used to be his dentist. This might not be this. They might not be the dentist. They might have had their friends who's a dentist. Yeah, I used to be Van Morrison's dentist. He used to come in, sit down, you know, grunt away, not speak to anybody. And while he would try to fish out the bloody muck and debris in his horrible Van Morrison mouth, which never looks like a nice place to go near. Halfway through, if he didn't like, he'd stand up and walk out. I can imagine him now sat there like that. Where your car's going? What's up? I'm trying to know for the Spector. There he is, off Van Morrison. Right now, recently he's gone all old and moaning about the COVID vaccine, and he's chummed up with Eric Clapton, and they've been a grumpy old man, and that's upset a certain aspect. And I got to be honest, I quite like him. Anyway, I ain't going to go about him too much on this video, but what I will do is say that my friend Mr. Tim Bonus, who's a massive Van Morrison fan, has set me a challenge, and I'm going to set the challenge to myself right now on this video, because he has loaned me, or given me, this album here. And this is a Van Morrison album. It's called No Guru, No Method, No Teacher. I like the sentiment of that. And it was created back in the 1980s, I think 1986, right? And he said for me to listen to it. And I am going to give it, I promise you I'm going to listen to it with an open mind. I'm going to report back. Tim knows what I like. It's very interesting that he would not only give me a Van Morrison album, but he would give me a Van Morrison album from the 1980s, because the 1980s isn't the best decade for music. And the idea of Van Morrison combined with any sort of DX7s just sounds like a fate worse than death, really. I'm having a look now. Oh my God, it's got all his albums here. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do, so you can keep an eye out for that. What am I going to think? I know, has Andy got an open mind, or will he just stick to his guns even though he might like it a little bit? So this album, No Guru, No Method, No Teacher, I will now stick in the car, and once I've gone through it a couple of times and had a good listen and made a decision, I will report back with a video all of its own. So I think that was number 6, wasn't it, Van Morrison? Let's go to number 5, shall we? At number 5, I've got an actual bastard. At number 5, I've got the awful Phil Spector.
It's like, we'll go watch the Rolling Stones, but when they condone murder, well, that's, you know, I paid it no mind. To me, it was just like they got caught up in the system. It's like somebody got away with murder there.
I can't stick this bloke, right? Now, we all know he ended up going to prison for murder, right? That's the sort of bastard we are now going from. We're going from quite likeable bastards now to real bastards on this second half, right? I don't think I'm going to find anything to championed with this bloke. I don't think there'll be any part of his personality where I'll be going, oh, I quite respect that, because I don't. If there's anything I quite like about Phil Spector, it's his use of wigs. He's a big wig fan. And when he was in court, rather than worrying about being going down for murder, it was more important that he turned up every day in a different wig. Now, why was he doing this? It's because he was off his head, right? So, yeah, he was a murderer. Yes, he used to pull guns on people. He was a misogynist. He used his position to be a horrible person. He was a proper bastard. Not like some of these fake bastards we've had so far, a proper one. But why do I think he's a real bastard? I'll tell you why. It's because, again, that even though he's a murderer and nobody wants to really mention him anymore, right? At one point, he was held to be a genius, and everybody thought he was a genius, right? Now, I'm going to tell you something straight about Phil Spector. He made some great records, classic records. You know, all those Christmas songs that he does with the Ronettes or whatever they were called. Was it the Ronettes? I don't know. You know, things like River Deep, Mountain High, all the stuff he did with Tina Turner. All of that stuff, the Beatles album that he produced, all the stuff he produced, everything he did, it would have been better if he hadn't produced them. What we would have then is not something that sounds like 100 musicians been tinnily recording in the back of some hall. That's what his records sound like. River Deep, Mountain High would be so much better if it was produced by somebody else. Right? So where is his genius? His genius is he's stood in the studio with no chin, acting like he's something special and dripping reverb all over everything. Putting too many instruments in. Everybody knows production's not about putting too many instruments. Anybody could do that. Look at Jacob Collier. He made a big thing out of it the other day. This is my latest tune, and it's got 150 vocals in it. You know, anybody can do that, right? You try and write a song that's got 3 instruments in it and make that work. That's proper production, not bloody Phil Spector. How did he pull the wool over everybody's eyes? The Beatles were in a bad place. Well, you know, they're in a bad place. They get Alan Klein, you know, who's a horrible bastard. If he was a proper musician, he'd be on the list without a doubt, right? They got him producing it. Yoko's in there. She's a bastard, isn't she? She's upsetting the apple cart with the Beatles. You know, Linda's not doing that. Yoko is. It's all going wrong for them. You know, we don't want to do Maxwell Silverhammer. Well, you'll do Maxwell Silverhammer. We don't want to do it now. Well, you'll do it. All that's going on. And how do they try and fix it? Let's go back to basics. Let's go and get I'll get the accent right in a minute. Let's go and get somebody like Phil Spector in. Because, of course, it was ELO we're talking about. And so they do. And what does he do? Ruin it. And so the Beatles' legacy, what we've had is everybody trying to get round that. Maybe we could use AI to get back to the original tracks. Maybe Peter Jackson can shoot the film again. Maybe we could just get back. Because that album has been bloody ruined. Who's it ruined by? Phil Spector. Chuck him in the bin. They should have chucked him in the bin a long time ago. If they'd have chucked him in the bin a long, long time ago, right, when they realised he was rubbish, he would have faded from view. Right? And he would not have then murdered anybody. Think about what I'm saying. Phil bloody Spector. What a bloody bastard. Now, I don't even have to pause it. I go straight into the other one because it occurred to me in the next. Who have we got at number 4? At number 4, I've got Ike Turner. This top 10's working out pretty good. They are ascending in bastardness. Ike Turner. Now, who the hell does he think he is?
If you look at Tina, do you see any of those scars? She said I broke her jawbone. If you ask a doctor can tell you, if I broke her jaw, no way is she going on stage.
You admit that you have slapped Tina before, but why, Ike?
She would be walking around looking sad, with a lip drop, and I keep asking her, and what is the matter with you? What's wrong? And it's always, nothing. And it would go on for a day or two till finally, why the don't you? And then this is where I would slap her or something. Then she would change her mood or attitude.
Ike bloody Turner, right? Only the bloke who invented rock and roll with that Rocket 88 tune. In the 1940s, there he is playing rhythm and blues. You know, he's got his act together. He's got the electric guitar. He's overdriving it. He's one of the guys. There's Sister Rosetta Tharpe. There's a few other ones out back there. But really, if you really just wanted to say, who's the guy that invented the whole bloody lot? It's Ike Turner. Right? And Ike Turner is one of these guys that has come up through that circuit where you have to put on a show. If you watch Ike Turner and the Ikettes, right? Those three girls, including Tina Turner, watch them perform. It's never been surpassed. Those three girls come out. It's incredible. It has never been surpassed. I'll put a bit of them here. Have you ever seen anything like that? Tina Turner's one of the great singers of all time. Ike Turner, he is the absolute bloody genius. Now, my daughter today, she's at school and she is rehearsing for their end of school show, Proud Mary, because my daughter can sing and she's going to get up and sing Proud Mary with another girl who can sing at the school. That is the legacy of Ike Turner. 1940s invented rock and roll. 2025 kids at school decided to celebrate them finishing their bloody first half of their life by singing Proud Mary. Now let's tell you a story about Proud Mary. So I've got some content here. Tina Turner is one of the Ikettes. She's the main one. Right, she's got married to Ike Turner, and so now, rather than being called Anna Mae Bullock, she is now called Tina Turner because that's onomatopoeic. Is that the right one? And so that sounds great. She's Tina Turner, and Ike's got this incredible talent. What does he do with his talent? He abuses her. He beats her up. Now, the fact is, the reason why he does this is because everybody seems to be bloody doing that from that neck of the woods there, but he's particularly vicious. And Tina Turner's in a terrible situation. She can't get out of it. Right? She can't get out of it, but she can't stay in it. So what the hell's she going to do? Now, she hates Ike for what he's doing, but she loves him as well. This is often what happens in an abusive relationship. Oh my God, this got very serious. And he's giving like this advice about, abusive relationships. Well, let's just go with it, see where he's going with this. Because it's an interesting story. I'm going to tell you an interesting story about Tina Turner now. You may know it, you may not know it. So she sat there and she thinks, I'm going to leave him. I've had enough. But before I leave him, I'm going to give him one last hit. And she goes, the only way he's going to have a hit is to get in with these rock bands, whether it be Led Zeppelin or Cream or Hendrix or Creedence Clearwater Revival. I throw them in as well because they were massive at the time. And so she persuades Ike to do versions of these songs. At that point, they do a version of Whole Lot of Love. Tina Turner's version of Whole Lot of Love is better than Led Zeppelin's versions of Whole Lot of Love. That's how good Tina is. Don't care what you say. Go and listen to it now. Right? So, one of these is Proud Mary, which is a sort of backwards rock and roll, bluegrassy type thing. Proud Mary, think of the Creedence Clearwater Revival version. They record that, it becomes a huge hit for Ike Turner. So she has now given him what he wanted. And they're driving home and he starts to beat her up as he normally does. And so she decides to fight back. The worm turns. Not that Tina was a worm. Not at all. I love her so much. She turns around and she punches Ike back. Of course, she gets seriously beaten up for it. They rock up to the hotel, right? She hasn't got access to her clothes. She's got no access to her money. She's totally trapped by this man. So she strokes his head, comforts the man until he falls asleep. Then she walks out of that hotel with no money, virtually no clothes, after being beaten up by him, covered in blood. And the only way she can get away from this motel is to cross the highway. And this should be one of those rock and roll lore stories. It's an incredible statement of survival. So in the middle of the night, covered in blood with no clothes, Tina Turner, one of the greatest performers and singers in the history of mankind, makes her way across this freeway, risking life and limb, and she manages to get to the other side, and she crawls up into a hotel there, and she walks up to the person on the desk and says, hello, my name is Tina Turner, and I need to stay here, but I've got no money. And thank God they let her in, thus creating Tina Turner. Now, she spent the rest of her time trying to make a living, playing Las Vegas at the bottom of the pile. The person that lifted her up was actually David Bowie, because David Bowie knew how great she was. Went to see her one night, his management were there and looked at it and said, well, this is the greatest performer on the planet at the moment, which she was. And that's my story. It's the story of the great Tina Turner and how she escaped the great bastard, which should probably be at number 1. We was only at number 4, which was Ike Turner. At number 3 on my list of rock and roll bastards, I've got one of the greatest musicians in the history of mankind and one of my most favourite musicians and someone who I have a lot of affection for. And I've just sat here and thought, shall I do this? And I thought, well, you've got Ike Turner, haven't you? You've got Ike Turner, and he's a bad guy because he beat his wife up. Well, this guy beat his wife up and more, I'm afraid. It's the Prince of Darkness. It's the great Miles Davis.
Music has to come first, not women like my nephew.
Miles Davis did not come from the sort of upbringing Ike Turner came from. He came from a wealthy middle-class family. His dad was a dentist, and they were rich enough to have their own property out in the countryside where they had like stables, horses, all that type of stuff. He arrives in New York in the 1940s, goes to Juilliard, a very prestigious classical music college, discovers jazz. He's incredibly talented. You know, by the time he's 21, he's playing with the greatest musician on the planet at the time, Charlie Parker, and he's keeping up with him. He eventually leaves that band. He completely changes the direction of jazz with his Birth of the Cool sessions. But at this point, he has succumbed. He's an addict. He's a heroin addict. And he supplants his heroin addiction, not just by playing music, by being a pimp. He pimps out women. He pimps out prostitutes. He sends them off. And they come back and they give him the money. Now, being a pimp is something which is an awful thing to do. It's one of the most horrendous, misogynistic things you can be. But here we have the beginning as a pimp, as a figure of celebration. Miles Davis not only invented coolness, but he invented pimpness, really. And from that, he then develops a behaviour towards women that is continually abusive. He is continually beating up women. He seems extremely jealous. And when he marries his Frances Davis, who was a highly renowned ballet dancer at the time, he destroys her career. And if she had as much as looked at somebody, he would beat them up. Once nearly, killing her after she just mentioned that Quincy Jones was quite a decent looking fella. His attitude towards his musicians seems to be different, and he seems to be loved by his musicians. I think Miles was a nasty piece of work, but I think the thing that he really is, you can't help but you can't fully buy into it because of the music, because his music is so gentle, it's so feminine, it's so full of his ability to use his vulnerability in the music. He could be brash. He could play like the boxers that he admired. Remember, guy was a trained boxer. He could fight, he can hit. He was a little man. Who did he pick on? The women. By the time we get to the mid-70s, he decides to throw it all in and spend his vast wealth that he'd got, through the records he'd sold by sitting in his house, taking tons of drugs and having all sorts of weird sex with all sorts of weird people. When he comes back in the 1980s, he seems to treat Cecilia Tyson, who seems to have got him back on his feet and helped him to the extent that he's naming records after her. He doesn't seem to have treated her very well. Yeah, I don't think Miles is 100% the best bloke in the world. But I have a very, very strong affection for Miles. He seems to have had his own set of standards, his own way of seeing the world. And you met him by it or you didn't, and he didn't compromise. And there's something to respect in that. But on the whole, I think, he has to be pretty high on the list of bastards. At number 2, I've got a pair of bastards. And not only are they a pair of bastards, but they're prog bastards. We have to have a couple of prog people on this list, or the proggers who are the basic hearts and soul of this channel won't be happy. So who's a bastard? Is it Steve Howe? No, not him. Not him. He's way down low. He didn't even make the top 10. Now, I'll tell you who it is. It's Dave Gilmour and bloody Roger Waters.
women being raped, which were all completely...
Actually, women were raped.
No, they weren't.
Yes, they were.
Well, there's no evidence.
It's been established by the
You
United
can
Nations.
say anything that you want, but there's no evidence.
Actually, there is extensive evidence.
There is no
of
evidence.
sexual assault and rape. Well, there is.
Okay, well, all right, now...
Also, we know what Hamas broadcast on social media.
Calm down. Roger, calm down. Don't sink to his level. All right, I won't.
What level?
Well, stop shouting. Stop shouting back. Let him interrupt you as much as you want. Okay, all right. Sorry, Piers, what were you saying?
It just seems. What do you mean? Well, I have no idea. It seemed like potentially something that we might, know from your past.
It's just a sound.
Right? Those two bloody aged curmudgeons get on my nerves. Pink Floyd get on my nerves, right? Pink Floyd are a great band, right? Echoes, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, a few of the better weird psychedelic stuff from the early days, perhaps. Maybe a few tracks off the wall. I don't know. I mean, come on. We've been over this a million times. That's not what I want to talk about. This isn't whether Pink Floyd are any good or not. Of course, they're bloody good. They're Pink Floyd. I've known people who've had bloody sort of changed their life listening to Dark Side of the Moon. They put the headphones on as one person, and then 40 minutes later, they take it off and go, oh my God, what's the point in it all? What is the bloody point in it all? That's what we're asking our questions. That's the question we're answering now. Come on. Pink Floyd still have the power to make young people like proper music, difficult music. They still have the power to get in the charts. They still have the power to get people in the cinema. This is a force of nature. Now, poor old Richard Wright, which seems to be a reasonable person and a decent musician, he's dead. He's gone. Nick Mason, lovely man. Quiet. Won't speak to you, but he's a lovely man. He's like the Lord of the Manor. He's like a benign lord sat in his manor house. Doesn't have to speak. He's got servants to do that. Got no problem with Nick Mason. He gives people what they want. Saucer full of secrets, with Spandau Ballet on there, and all that bit. Saucer full of secrets. He's out there, he's playing, he's giving them what they want. Right? He knows what they want. But it really comes down to these two bloody curmudgeons, doesn't it? Really, Dave Gilmour, right, and Roger Waters. Now, when they played Live 8, you look at Roger Waters' face, because they all get up and play together, and he can see, he goes, oh my God, because they're greater than the sum of their parts, aren't they, Pink Floyd? Now, whether they could still be greater without Richard Wright, I don't know. But the trouble is, they're still bringing stuff out, aren't they? And we have to put up with it. And Dave Gilmour turns up on the Rick Beato show, with half a moustache, doesn't he? Stand there and go, yes, the new album's really great. We've got Steve Gadd on drums. I wrote it this and I did that, and I'm really great on the guitar, even though I play simple stuff. I can't play fast, but I don't need to because I'm a multi-millionaire. It's only poor guitarists that have to play fast. And I've got a new album, and if you listen to it, it's very tasteful. It has none of the edge of Pink Floyd, none of the sort of existential angst. It's just very middle-of-the-road music for middle-aged men, sort of Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson. Put it on your car. It'll never get out of second gear, but probably you won't either because you're driving a sports car because you feel like you're at a midlife crisis and you can't get out of second gear, but neither can the music. It will sit there. Neither of them will be getting out of second gear. You will absolutely love it. And it's very tasteful stuff, that's what I'm doing. And then at the other end of the thing, you got Roger Waters going, I absolutely hate Israel. I hate the Jews. I'm a socialist. I was brought up by my mummy and she trained me to be a socialist. I'm a Marxist. And even though I am stinking rich, I am going to champion the poor, especially the poor Palestinians. I'm going to go out and do concerts. I'm going to dress up as a Nazi. Loads of people will turn up because I'll be doing my versions of Pink Floyd songs, but I'll be doing how I want them, which is it's devoid of any musical thing that you enjoy. In fact, I'm going to redo Dark Side of the Moon, and it will be like as though it's been remade by Tom Waits with a drum machine. That's what it sounds like, and I'll just bark, quietly over it. So it draws attention to the lyrics, because that was the important thing about Dark Side of the Moon. Not Dave Gilmour with his wonderful guitar solos and beautiful musical interviews, and not Nick Mason with his actual real drummings that sounds delicate and beautiful and precise all at the same time. None of that matters. It's my vision. And then Dave goes, no, it's my vision. It's my vision. No, it's my vision. It's my vision. Pink Floyd's my band. No, it's my band. We're old and we're very rich millionaires and we should know better, but we're still going to behave like children. Yes, we are. And then, of course, remember when he was on Piers Morgan, he'll talk to himself. Roger, I can't deal with this Gilmour. It's absolutely, and I'll tell you something about him. It's not just him, it's his wife. I mean, what's she got to do with it? Who's she? Bloody OAP Yoko Ono trying to break up the band. The band's broken up already. Why can't these two get on? Can you imagine what would happen to the music industry if we had an announcement, not bloody Noel and Liam getting back together, not, Ozzy sat on his throne, trying to bark out war pigs, sat on his throne. I would go, oh my God, can anything beat that? You could get Paul McCartney and Ringo get back together. But do you really get, with Pink Floyd, I think there's enough there with Nick, I forgot Nick, he'd be there as well. Nick Mason, think about it. Is there anything bigger that could ever happen? And because it could happen, it must happen. And why is it not happening? Because they are curmudgeons, rich millionaire curmudgeons that don't like doing anything that they don't like. Oh my God, I've fallen out with people. I've had people do worse things than they've done to each other, right? What have they done to each other? What don't they like? But they did the final cut. He did the final cut and tried to turn it into his backing band. Fair enough. It's not the end of the world, is it? What did Dave Gilmour do? Carry on Pink Floyd's name without Roger Waters? It's not the end of the world, is it? Really? Can't they make friends? I'm putting it out there now. It's going dark here for some reason. It's like they crucified Jesus at the moment somewhere. I'm sat here and suddenly it's gone really dark. As I'm saying this, as though I'm venturing into an area that I shouldn't be venturing into. Maybe Dave Gilmour and Roger Waters control the weather in some way. I'm sure they do. And if anybody broaches this obvious thing that we could get back together, it should be like this, shouldn't it? This is Roger Waters. Oh, I should really get back together with Dave. He's not that bad, really. I mean, we don't see eye to eye on absolutely anything, but he's a good guitar player. There seems to be a magic between us. Our two voices together, they work really well, don't they? They do. Shall I give him a call? Hello, is that Dave? Yeah, it's Roger. Yeah, well, I'm doing all right, yeah. What am I calling? Just thought I'd give you a call, really. See how you're doing. Why, you didn't expect it? I know. Well, it gets all a bit leery on Twitter, doesn't it? You say stuff you wish you hadn't said. I mean, look at Elon Musk. He's saying all sorts about Trump, isn't it? And we're a bit like that, you and me. No, I'm Elon Musk, you're Trump. No, I don't want to be Trump. There's no way I'm going to be Trump. I'm very left-wing. And out the two, I mean, I don't think Elon's left-wing, is he? But I'd rather be Elon. No, I want to be Elon. In this, I was only using it as a metaphor to explain the relationship we've got that used to work at one point, and now it's gone all toxic, and we're having. No, I know. Well, I know we did it before them. Why aren't they doing that? Why? I don't know. You have a word with Trump. See what Trump says. I mean, you must know him. You're a powerful man. Ring up Trump and say, why aren't you using as a metaphor the feud between David Gilmour and Roger Waters to describe the feud that you've now got with Elon Musk? No. Well, if you could give him a call, that would be quite good. Hey, we nearly had a row there, didn't we, about that? Yeah? Remember, just now, when I said I wanted to be Elon Musk and you wanted to be, and neither of us wanted to be Trump, and we nearly had a row, but we didn't, you see, and maybe there's some hope. Yeah. No, I'm doing all right. Yes, it's all good. Yeah, she's doing lovely. No. Yeah, I would like to see you, actually. I would, actually. Have you got a decent curry house near you? What, you got nothing near you? Same here in my bloody mansion. You know, I've got to drive 10 minutes just to get off the bloody premises. Yeah, Uber Eats, it's bloody rubbish, isn't it? I know. You know, I had one of my security guards shoot the Uber Eats guy the other day. Yeah. It was, I covered it, of course, you know what it's like, but you know, they didn't really, I had forgot to tell them. I forgot to tell them they were bringing a chicken jalfrezi. Yeah. I did enjoy it, though. Well, you're a vegetarian. No, the wife's made you do that. Oh, never mind. Yeah, let's get back together. Should we get the old band back together? What about Nick? Yeah, he's going to do it. We don't even have to ask him, do we? He'll do whatever, won't he, old Nick? Yeah, that sounds brilliant then. Shall we tell the world then? It's that easy, Dave. It's that easy, Roger. Make friends. Life's too short, especially for you two. Right. We now get to number one. All the time I've been doing this video, my brain's been going like this. Because this one was not going to be this. It was going to be the 20 greatest prog rock epics. Oh, Andy, I really want to see that one. I know, it's a good idea. And basically, I got the list. I photographed it on my phone, right? I came here. I was about to set it all up, write it all down on a piece of paper, get me notes in order. I've got a few things I can remember, dates and things like that. Put it on a piece of paper, right? And then when I opened up the phone, I'd photographed the wrong list. I'd photographed the 10 greatest British comedy films, which is for another channel altogether. And so I thought, oh, I'm here now. I've got to do something. Or I might have a video up. So I thought, what would be just the best video? And I thought, the 10 greatest rock and roll bastards. It's just brilliant, but I have no idea what that is. So I've had to form this video as we've gone, right? And I've been able to talk about some musicians. I've been able to extract some comedy from it. It's been light-hearted. It's been funny. If you're a music fan, it's the combination of comedy and music. Nobody else does this. Where can you get people making jokes about Van de Graaff generator? You can't. It's only here you can get such things. And that's what I provide, you know. Provide something that nobody else does if you want to be a success. That's my business motto. So what am I going to put as number one? Well, the thing is that bastard is to... I need to create a phrase here to describe this. Bastard is as bastard does. There we go. And by that I mean, it can mean anything. We could have a positive bastard like Lemmy, a rock and roll bastard, and we know where at, or we could have a right dodgy one like Phil Spector. In fact, this is a category, it's rubbish, isn't it? It's rubbish, okay? So I want you to think about this. Why have I done this? Right, I've just done a video about music shops and how they're dying. I've talked about how the music industry has moved from buying stuff in shops to online and the things you gain and the things. It's all sensible stuff. Nobody will watch that video. So I have to balance it by creating a video that people will watch. Now let's see what the views do on this. Now it might be that the title is so far out that people just won't click on it. But if my calculations are right, this will get a ton of views. And hopefully my style, and I am on form today, I have to admit, I am on form because I got some sleep. I've been able to come on and riff some stuff that is mildly amusing, even I think that. I'm arrogant enough to think I nailed this video. But does this video make logical sense? No. Is it right to have on the list a murderer, a wife beater, and then one of the great frontmen, Lemmy, that didn't do anybody any harm ever? No, none of it's right. The reason is because these lists are stupid. I know they're stupid, and you know they're stupid, but I still do them, and you still watch them. And I know that you're going to watch them. That's the point. And that's what this is all about. So who's the biggest bastard in this situation on this video? Who is it? It's me! It's me! I'm vindicated. I'm vindicated because I've pushed it all back onto me. It's me. Even though, you know, those clever people in the things that put in the comment, like when I do one of these negative ones, they go, well, actually, I think the YouTuber that made this is the biggest bastard of all. You can't even put that out because I've come in at number 1. I know I am. This is just a shallow, facetious attempt to get views on my channel. How can you justify this, Andy? How can you justify this? How can you justify making a video like this? Pete Pardo at Sea Tranquility wouldn't do this. He doesn't play tricks on his audience. He doesn't make up the lists before, you know. Why should I even watch you? You had no content this morning. You thought of the title first. Have you got the thumbnail in your mind? Not quite. I think Lemmy will be on it. Because Lemmy's iconic, isn't he? Lemmy, me, Phil Spector, and then just very simple. Not ranked or anything like that, because this wasn't really ranked. It meant nothing. Just the 10 worst rock and roll bastards. That's how the rock and roll in it. It's pure beauty. This is YouTubing 101, right? Now, am I doing any good doing this? Yes, of course I am. Because what I'm doing is I'm doing a meta YouTube top 10, right? Of any other, you know, Barry at Over Classic Album Review, you know him? The bald one, you know, in the art studio. Doing a bit of doodling. Is it him that does the doodling? I always think it's his wife that does the doodling. He just says, Inio says, can I go in and just use your room? I'll be quick then, because I've got some doodling to do. I won't be very long. I don't do videos like Andy. There's only about 15, 20 minutes because I have to script them because they actually make sense and they're planned, unlike him that did the 10 rock and roll bastards. I'll show him. Barry, do it properly so they get the full works, right? Do it properly. I don't mind. If this does a load of views, you think Andy just did the 10 rock and roll bastards. You do it. I invite you all. Classic album review, notes review's not going to do. It's too nice. And you know, old Scott at Prog Corner, he's not. They're all too nice, you see, and that's the point. They are, but I'm not. You see, I'm not. You see my mouth wobbling. I'm not. Right? This is why I'm number 1. I know it. I'm disliked as much as I'm liked. If you go watch these other guys, they don't get the hate. Barry does. But the reason why Barry does it is because of that posh English accent and his way with words, right? Ever since he's talking, and he always talks sense, he always comes across a little bit like a Bond villain. Now, I said it also comes across a little bit like a fisherman, but that's just that's the surface aesthetic of Barry. He's like a fisherman. You know, you see him, he should really be making a net in Cornwall on the side of the thing, you know, with one of them jumpers on, you know, and a clay pipe. That's how I imagine Barry. And there's nothing wrong with that's a good way to spend your day. But when you sit down, you start talking to him, you know, he's not that at all. He's actually a Bond villain. And so I think he does attract the ire of you lot, but nowhere near like I do. I'm hated as much as I'm loved, aren't I? Right, I'm going to tell you the serious bit of this video at the end. Do you really want to know why I make these videos? I mean, all of them, every single video on the channel. There's all sorts of reasons. I'm a creative person. I want to get certain ideas across. Right? I want to make you think, perhaps. I want to talk about the music we love. I want to try and help artists. I want to help the music industry. I want to do all these good things. I'm not a bastard, really. I want to do all these good things. I'm a good person, and I'm showing you I'm good, right? But I want to make an hour-long video where it's just me talking into the camera, and I want it to be entertaining. I want somebody to come home and go, oh, this one looks like it's going to be quite good. And I want people to watch it, and I want them to watch it all the way through because I want them to be happy. I want them to like what I'm doing and go, this bloke's off his head and he seems to be having a good time. And it's very simple. He's just talking into camera, right? It's not bloody Marvel film or, you know, Lord of the Rings. It's nothing like that. It's not that type of entertainment. It's a bloke with a camera talking into it and trying to entertain me. And he's entertaining me by cracking jokes about bands that the regular people wouldn't get because they're not into those bands. It's a very niche type of thing. But in there, there's this sort of self-deprecated English humour where he seems like he's been an arrogant git, but really, he's taken the mickey out of everybody, including himself. I want to create entertaining videos. I have tried to do it on this channel. And I've tried to show off at how good I am doing it. That's my ego part, right? I've done over 1,000 videos and I think I know how to do a YouTube video. And I think, you know, I've sat here for an hour without a script. I have paused a few times, but without a script, and I've come up with this. And not only that, is I've timed it that it will be exactly an hour long. Like the best jazz musicians in the world, I have riffed. And you thought it was just wild, crazy stuff. But here we are, 27 seconds away from it being smack on the hour. And I have managed to tie all the loose ends up, make something which I think is relatively coherent. And I am now trying to time my last sentence so that when I come right to the end, I manage to land exactly on 60 minutes.
There will always be in England.
Hello.